You know, I'm starting to feel like the one thing that I really need above all else is just someone to stop me from making all of these Xenoblade 1 videos, because they're going to be immediately invalidated by Definitive Edition if it makes any significant story changes. Honestly, it doesn't matter if it's about the story or not. Stop me from making any Xenoblade 1 videos at all until I have a chance to record the gameplay for them with the improved graphics of the remake instead of still using these stream downloads from 2018. Anyway though, Egil fans of the internet seem to have pegged me as public enemy number 1, but maybe this will get them at least a bit less eternally pissed off at me. A video where I actually say good things about him. Of course, this is Egil, so we're gonna have to involve discussion of Mechanis Core and beyond, so as usual with this kind of thing, spoilers for the entire game. Now, you might be looking at the title of the video and thinking that that's kind of an obvious thing, especially for the outlandish ways this channel tends to go into things. And you're right. I couldn't really put the actual topic of the video in the title without spoiling stuff, so I went with something fairly obvious instead. I think it's pretty easy to tell from playing the game that Shulk and Egil are supposed to be counterparts to each other. The thing I really want to talk about, though, is the ways that Egil, either intentionally or not, made Shulk able to succeed and ultimately defeat Zanza where he had failed. I am going to go over the counterpart thing quickly though, just so everyone's on the same page. It's part of the whole cycle of revenge theme that the game has. Egil had his homeland attacked by Zanza's Telethia and then wanted to destroy him as revenge. He wanted to stop Zanza so that something like that would never happen again. A noble goal, but eventually arrived at the conclusion that the only way to do so was to kill everyone on Bionis so Zanza wouldn't have food anymore. This led to the development of the Mechon army, and then it attacking the Homs colonies, and ultimately, Shulk's homeland was attacked by Metalface, causing him to want to set out and take revenge on the Mechon, and ultimately Egil. In trying to stop the cycle, Egil had accidentally started to perpetuate it. Shulk would have gone down the path of destroying all Mechon, which would end with him attacking either the Hidden Village or Agniratha again, angering the Machina, even if he did ultimately stop Egil. They would have probably changed their mind about the peoples of Bionis, and then probably tried to retaliate against them, keeping the cycle going. He was stopped from that path by meeting with the Machina, finding out about Zanza, and ultimately listening to his friends instead of Zanza in his head, to go for a stop the threat solution to the war instead of a kill every enemy type one. Egil is an example of Shulk had he not listened and given into revenge. He must not have valued the opinions of those close to him as much, which led to him going against the wishes of his people and his goddess, both of whom preferred peace. His family, although seemingly a lot more Vinaya than Mikol, does still seem to love him after everything, so I'm not entirely sure where this desire to go against everyone's wishes came from, although it might just be that his fundamental flaw is thinking he's always right and his ideas and opinions are superior to everyone else's, and that just kind of snowballed into the situation we find ourselves in the game. Under other circumstances, Egil and Shulk would probably be friends. Probably not as close as Egil was to Arglis. Shulk isn't really a philosopher, but they could definitely bond over engineering. Egil has to at least tolerate machines if he made that many Mechon, and they do have a shared interest in exploring away from the Titans to see anyone who lives just out there beyond the confines of what they know. A surviving Egil would definitely join in with Shulk's desire to meet the people of the Endless Universe had he made it to the end of the game. Also keep in mind, Egil wanted Shulk to beat Zanza once he lost to him. If someone's stronger than he is, and agrees with him that Zanza should be stopped, they're gonna have a better chance than he did. Ultimately, Egil had noble goals, but went through some of the worst methods possible to try and achieve them. I'm not counting him passing the torch of breaking the cycle to Shulk after Zanza reveals himself as part of the things he did that caused Shulk to win in the end. The important part is the stuff from before Mechanis Core. Once Zanza came out of Shulk's body, Egil pretty much switched to actively trying to help Shulk win in the end. So that's not interesting. You could see that just by looking at the cutscenes. I want to more talk about things he passively or accidentally did to help him win in the past. I got 3 big talking points for this. The easy one is not destroying Bionis in its entirety, and just generally acting how antagonists tend to do in stuff like this. It's the usual thing. if he'd sent his full force out and completely wiped the Homs out, either during the Colony 9 attack, during the Battle of Sword Valley, or at some point earlier in time, since Mechon have been an active threat at least since Dunban was younger. Shulk obviously would never have had a chance of getting anywhere at all if he had died before he even got a chance to pick up the Monado. On the other hand, as long as there was a functional Monado wielder, Egil would still probably lose without something like the Faces to counter it. Dunban was able to destroy the entire force at Sword Valley almost single-handedly, and we saw what that did to his body, so as long as someone with a reasonable amount of strength who could pick up the Monado and point it at the robots was around, they probably still would win in the end, just with a lot more casualties. And of course, by not destroying Colony 9 personally in Yaldabaoth, Egil allowed Shulk's journey to continue, and allow him to get stronger and become a bigger threat to him. And then beyond that, it's just the usual video game thing of, oh yeah, the enemies will get stronger as we go along, but it's incrementally so, there's never a big jump, and you never go out of order. The next guy is always the one that's the next strongest after the previous guy type thing. It largely boils down to Egil and his Mechon army being such a challenge to Shulk. It was the Monado 3 that allowed him to beat Zanza, but if he hadn't gotten so strong from fighting such powerful enemies up until that point, he might not have even gotten to the point where he could face Zanza and unlock it. There's a lot of stuff in between waking up after Mechonis Core and actually getting to Zanza. He could have been stopped and the party entirely wiped out at Lorithia, at Dixon, at the Dragon, at the Obarts. There's a lot of stuff in there. The second big point is the fact that Egil created a unified force of Bionis people who were willing to fight against him and then Zanza after him. Egil wanted all life on Bionis destroyed, and thought he was completely capable of doing that, so he probably didn't care at all if they united against him, but that became a very big thing in the end. Homs living lower on the Bionis thought that the High Antia were a myth until they started meeting them. And keep in mind, that information comes from Dunban of all people, who's the most worldly and traveled out of anyone from there who is actually a Homs, unlike Dixon, who is his own special thing. However, once the party went on the journey to Prison Island, the Homs colonies were able to start relations with the High Antia, and then also the frontier village Napan along the way, which is something that would have never happened otherwise. The High Antia would have been completely wiped out if the ones who didn't transform into Telethia didn't have Colony 6 to escape to, because they would have been stuck either just out in the wilds where there's a shit ton of monsters too. If the Telethia don't get you, the Hodes will. Or they would have been stuck inside Alchemoth, boxed in with a bunch of their transformed former family and friends, which is not a very good thing in general. Without the peoples of Bionis being unified, they couldn't have defended themselves from the Telethia as well as they did. And even if the party still took down Zanza in the end, there might not have been many people left to enjoy the new world, and the Machina would almost certainly have been completely gone. And then number 3, the last one, Egil, although he started to perpetuate the cycle by causing Shulk's revenge quest, he also did things that ended in it finally breaking. It may have been unintentional, but Egil's actions in trying to counter the Monado ended up preventing Shulk from going down the same path of revenge he did. As in, the making the face Mechon thing. The whole thing where you send an armed force to invade a peaceful colony, kidnap people, modify their bodies so they can't survive outside of a mech suit for a certain amount of time, and then brainwash them into working for you. That helped the people he was doing that to win in the end. I think most people will agree that's like the morally worst thing Egil did, so this will probably take some explanation. Had Fiora not been brought back as a face pilot and just stayed dead after the Colony 9 attack, Shulk probably wouldn't have snapped out of his desire for revenge. At Prison Island, when he's told to say the enemy you want to destroy and you'll get the power or whatever when he transforms the Monado, he says Mechon. At that point in time, he still wants to kill every last one of them. It's not until right after that fight, when he learns Fiora is still alive and the realization that faces are Homs, starts to make him rethink that. Afterwards, his goal shifts fairly quickly from annihilate the Mechon to avenge Fiora's death, to rescue Fiora and try not to kill any of the Homs inside the faces. It happens almost immediately, really. There is the whole, would you even kill a Homs to beat us line, but that's actually aimed at Dunban, not Shulk. Shulk already knows that his answer to that is no by then. The power of the Unshackled Monado is the power to kill Homs. That's a very abusable thing, and a very good way to go down a pretty morally grey direction, and it's largely due to the faces that Shulk ends up not going too far with that. Them saving Fiora is also what makes Shulk trust the Machina so quickly. He probably would have still eventually realized that Egil is an outlier when it comes to viewpoints on Bionis, but I can definitely see a big misunderstanding at first. Now, even by then, Shulk doesn't know what Egil looks like, but if he sees those people look like the human sentient people that go with the mechon animal things, just like we're the human sentient people that go with like the bunnet or the crabble animal things, he might have still assumed they were associated somehow. Yeah, they were, but semantics and ancient history and all that kind of thing. Fiora's influence is even what stopped Shulk from going and killing Egil at the Mechonis core fight. He was about to give in to the Zanza in his head, and she was the loudest voice telling him not to. Egil thought Shulk and Zanza were one and the same, and it was the whole not killing him thing that convinced him otherwise. If Shulk had just gone through with it and offed Egil there, he probably would have become indistinguishable from Zanza, and would just like naturally fuse with him into one combined being, instead of the whole needing to be shot to release God thing. If there were no faces in the attack on Colony 9, and Fiora was just normally killed by regular Mechon, the revenge quest thing would still happen, but they'd probably just do another Sword Valley. It's due to Metalface being unusual and standing out against the other Mechon that caused them to want to follow him specifically, which led them to travel up Bionis, meet everyone else, and, actually win and stuff. Even making Fiora a face was an important decision that led to Shulk doing his thing. This might have been more of a Vinaya decision. I don't know if Egil chose to make Fiora a face, and Vinaya just put Maineth in her against his wishes, or if she specifically said, no, let's take that girl, I can make a face pilot out of her. If any other woman was chosen as Maineth's host, the pilot of Face Nemesis, and been with Mumkar there on Prison Island, taking the attack for him and whatever, the impact of Homs being faces would have hit a lot differently. It would probably increase the desire for revenge against the Mechon out of disgust that they were doing that to Homs, rather than providing everyone in the party besides Melia a massive amount of hope because Fiora was alive. Ultimately, the TLDR of this is, because of his beliefs and actions, Egil set up circumstances that directly contributed to Shulk's eventual defeat of Zanza in the end, and if it weren't for him being like that and doing those things, there's a very good chance stuff would have gone very differently and Shulk would have lost. It's obvious that everyone who's alive at the end of the game has Egil to thank for that, at least in part. He protected the party and allowed them to escape Mechonis safely, get back to Colony 6. If that hadn't happened and Shulk had died, there's no way they could have beaten Zanza without him. So, yeah, Egil did definitely contribute to that whole thing, but he also did a lot while he was still an enemy of the party to do that, and I think that's kind of interesting. But yeah, that's the video. Don't really know what to say about this. I thought that I'd have a lot more interesting stuff to say about it when I came up with this topic, but I'm okay with this being a lot shorter than usual because of being very, very pressed for time this time, so yeah. You got the Xenobites, and there's going to be a Xenogears recap next week too, but this is just a weird Sunday video that's under 20 minutes long, so enjoy it while you can. The next one's probably going to be back to being big, even though I have no idea what it's going to be on yet. I don't know, I'm not quite at the point where I'm like, yeah, I'm out of ideas, please give me stuff I haven't talked about yet. And the thing is, I still have a Xenosaga, and finishing the entire Xeno series will give me a huge amount of more material, and then Definitive Edition will come out, and that'll give me a huge amount of more material, so if by the time that happens I haven't started actively soliciting video ideas, don't get your hopes up for your suggestion getting immediately picked up, because it's going to be a while before I need them. So, I'm sorry about that. If I independently come up with the same video idea you wanted to see, then that's good for all of us. But yeah, until next time, this is Luxon signing off. I really need to sleep.